Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur has mentioned is typifying the Gambhira pastimes, which we find in the Madhya Lila, is that of Srimati Radharani in Vrindavan when Uddhava arrived and visited to relay the message that Krishna had given. Actually, we were discussing at the end of the first chapter of Madhya Lila that there is a description of the various books that have been written by Rupa, Sanatan and Jiva Goswamis. There is actually a text, there are two texts within this whole pastime that have been written by Rupa Goswami. There is Hamsa Dutta, which was a letter or a poem composed by the gopis to be given to Krishna by a swan, hence the title, Hamsa Dutta. And so this was one text, and the other one is Uddhav Sandesh, where Rupa Goswami has actually written a sort of elaborate description of Krishna's message to the gopis. But these texts are, as was the focal point of our discussion on those texts, rather esoteric. But still, I thought it was an interesting point to mention. So Uddhav, he has, as we were discussing, he had arrived in Vrindavan, he is discussing with all these devotees, he is witnessing their ecstasies, and he is talking to the gopis after finishing talking to Nanda Maharaj. And while talking to them, they're very distraught. We have the famous Brahmar Gita, where Radharani, she speaks all of these chastisements to a small bumblebee. Because as we were discussing before, there are levels of ecstasy beyond prem, or rather the developments of prem. And the first is sneha, but the second is mana, which is abhorrence or anger. So in this we see she is showing this. However, the gopis in general, they are saying many things. They're saying, Krishna, he has abandoned us. A prostitute has no need for a man who is penniless without money. The subjects, they have no need for a king who is inept. Students, once they have graduated from school, they abandon their teacher. They do not need their teacher anymore, and no one condemns them for abandoning their teacher. In the same way, Krishna, he has left us. And so they are, again, in lots of pains. And Uddhav, now he is witnessing, he is seeing in front of him that very thing that Krishna had told him, you will see. So then he begins, and he begins first by glorifying these gopis. He says, you are universally worshipped. He says, these gopis I see before me, it is not. Worship is done by a lesser for a greater. So one person is worshipping a greater person. Srila Prabhupada did not worship his disciples. His disciples worshipped him. But if somebody is to be universally glorified, then we must understand their position must be universally upmost. So in saying this, he is saying that you who are seeing before me, even though I am such an aristocratic man, a man of such a great background, I am seeing these simple cowherd girls, but I am saying that they are worshipable, not just by me, but by everyone that I know. They are higher than anyone in existence. And in fact, the reason why is because this love for Godhead, this bhakti, this devotion, it is cultivated in the spiritual path by various different means. And he lists a few. Dana, which is donation for the Vaishnavas and for temples, for Krishna's sake, things are donated. Through dana, through vrata, like Ekadashi and other austerities which are vowed to be taken up. Ekadashi is a particularly fun one because it's mentioned in the Garga Samhita that actually Ekadashi continues into the spiritual world. So often we don't relish sometimes. We try our best to relish Ekadashi in this world, but sometimes it's a little difficult. Well, it would be a good thing to try to cultivate relishing it because it won't stop. It's not a bhaumic thing which is limited only to the material world. It's discussed that actually the observance of Ekadashi continues in the spiritual domain as well. Then there is tapas, which is of course that very essential renunciation of sense gratification. And then there's homa, which is the fire sacrifice. Then there is japa. We all know japa, the chanting of the holy names, or the chanting of mantras in general. And then there is svadhyaya, shastric study. In the purport, the specific example is given of Gopal Tapani Upanishad. So with these various things that many people are engaging in, these are common spiritual practices, they are all aiming towards this one goal, this one goal of having devotional love for Krishna. But yet here these gopis, they are having it themselves. And these gopis that Uddhav is seeing before him, he is saying, well, actually, all the sages in the world, they are trying only to obtain the lotus feet of Krishna. Even the lotus feet of Krishna might be on the purview of their attempts in their spiritual life. And yet, you have seen, what we are seeing here is that you are having this. All these sophisticated sages who have renounced the world to go into the Himalayas and all, they're doing all these tapasya, and yet you are having this goal. And then he says, the most essential point. And in this point here, we get to see, through the lens of Uddhava, we get to see what is the significance of these pains of separation. They were feeling these pains of separation constantly. Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur, however, specifically mentions Uddhava, because Uddhava, he is like, they say a third party has the most transparency when seeing things. Sometimes, without a relative standard to be set, it can be hard to realize what something is. Everything can be relative. Everyone in Vrindavan is so consumed in these moods that at one point, maybe we won't be able to see how high and exalted they are. Maybe at one point it becomes a bit, because the gradations, even though there are higher and higher rasas, still the lowest rasa in Goloka Vrindavan, or in Vrindavan, in Madhya Lila, is so much higher than any other rasa or bhava anywhere else. So because that standard is set so high, sometimes that position, it can be seen maybe a little bit lower than it actually is. But Uddhava coming in, a third party who is not part of these affairs, who is a fresh eyes, he is seeing these things. And then when he speaks, he says, what I have seen in you has been unseen in this whole world before now. This is unseen, unheard of. Who had seen devotion like this? Who had known devotion like this? And by seeing your pains of separation, not by seeing your prem, but by seeing your pains of separation, you have given me the greatest blessing I could have ever desired. There is such a great blessing I have been given just by seeing this devotion. Because this devotion has not been seen before by any other person. It has not manifested on the earth. Again, this is why Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is trying to taste this. This right here, which Uddhava is seeing, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wants to taste it. Because this prem, this bhav, this taste and love for the Supreme Lord, this is unique among all people. Krishna does not want to settle for anything less than the best. And this is the greatest thing here. And this is why, again, Mahaprabhu, Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur is saying, he is tasting that. That same pains of separation, which Uddhav felt so blessed seeing. By seeing that, with that perspective, Mahaprabhu is trying to taste that. So in saying that, he says, he glorifies them. But after glorifying them, then he says the message that Krishna has given. And the message that Krishna has given for Uddhava, to give the gopis, is very similar to the message that he was given to give to Nanda Maharaj. And on its face, it seems very philosophical. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, if anyone hears these philosophical things he is saying, he's saying things like, if one should not think that I am not present everywhere, because just the same as all the 5 elements are present in all of existence, in the same way I'm present everywhere as a supersoul. This is a very philosophical, somewhat, you could say, dry description of Krishna's presence everywhere. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, it is the most foolish person who hears these comments that Krishna has given for Uddhava to relay. It is the most foolish person who hears these things and then thinks these gopis were sentimental. They had to be shaken up a bit and be reminded of what true philosophy is. They needed to be informed what the actual truth is. They were at a lower level, but because of some devotion that they had earned now the right to hear about the highest philosophical truths. Some fools will hear this, and again, this is the importance of receiving the Shastras, receiving all these pastimes through the parampara system. Because sometimes our minds, we may come to all sorts of conclusion, and it is not guaranteed that it will be correct. But it is explained that the foolish people who do not understand the proper mood will think like this. But actually, there are 2 elements to this. The first is that Krishna, he is meaning something else. By his words, he is saying one thing, but there is a deeper purport, which again, Krishna stressed to Uddhav. Do not speak any separate words. Do not try to diplomatically adjust my words. Speak these words, and the gopis, they will understand a deeper meaning to them. And so, they did understand a deeper meaning, and we will get to that in a second. But the other thing that it is said, is it said the preaching of this jnana yoga, of this jnana, the path of jnana, of knowledge, which was being done, was the same as when Krishna, sometimes Krishna, he preaches for the Leelas, he sometimes preaches something which isn't necessarily true. We know before Govardhan Lila, Krishna, he discovers the Mimamsa philosophy. And he promulgates Mimamsa completely incorrectly. In order that his sweet pastimes may occur, he was speaking something which is completely unfounded, or at least not as completely founded as Vedanta. So he was speaking all these sort of ideas. And before the Ras Lila, he was speaking the path of karma. He was speaking the path of pious works. And even though he was speaking them, the intention wasn't that the gopis would then say, oh, okay, then we'll follow this. We're going to stop what we're doing and we'll go off. In a similar way, their devotion was shown. The glories of the gopis were shown by their rejecting, or rather their transcending these things. And in a similar way, Krishna now, he is explaining to them jnana. And in their rejection of it at the end, we can begin to see some semblance of their glories. So then that is one reason. The other is that there was an internal meditation. Because even though he could mean that he is pervading all things philosophically in tattva, like in an impersonal sense, the deeper meaning is that actually, even though I seem to have been gone, I am still dwelling in your hearts. Even though I'm gone, I am still existing. Because of your love, I am still existing in your hearts. Uddhava believed at one point when he was seeing this, that he felt like he had almost seen Krishna himself. So intense was their bhakti, their prema, that with that intense longing, he felt like he could see Krishna. And His Grace Madhavananda Prabhu tells a very sweet pastime in regards to this. It is sometimes asked, we know there are the two Krishnas. There's a Krishna who is in Vrindavan eternally, and then there's the Krishna who leaves Vrindavan. In a similar way, there are also three Radharanis, it is discussed. There's the Hladini Shakti Radharani, and she is the one who is constantly staying in Vrindavan. When Krishna stays in Vrindavan, she is also staying in Vrindavan alongside him. Then there is the Viyogini Radharani. In the same way that Krishna who leaves Vrindavan is not in Goloka Vrindavan, this Radharani, she is also only present in the Prakat Lila. And Viyogini Radharani, she is a Radharani because she is tasting that separation. She is tasting that distance. When Krishna leaves Vrindavan, apparently, then she is tasting that. She is feeling that separation. And that is the Viyogini Radharani. And then the last one is Samyogini Radharani. The first two stay in Vrindavan eternally. And the last one is the one who leaves. And this is the Radharani who leaves to enter into Kurukshetra. These are the three Radharanis who correspond to the pastimes of Krishna leaving. These three aspects of Radha, they're described as Shaktis, because of course she is the fountainhead of all Shakti Tattva. These correlate rather logically to the two Krishnas. But so then the question is still asked. So Krishna leaves Vrindavan, but where does that Krishna who stays in Vrindavan, where does he hide? Where does he hide when this other Krishna is gone? Because Krishna cannot leave Vrindavan. This is one of the reasons building up to why it is why there is the whole idea of two Krishnas. Because it could not be that Krishna would ever leave Vraj. So that other Krishna has not left with the second Krishna. That would render pointless this idea. Madhavananda Prabhu, he gives a few reasons, but one very sweet one that he has described is that actually when this Krishna who is ruling Dwarka, when he leaves, that Krishna who is ruling Vraj, that same Krishna, he hides in the hearts of all of the gopis. He is hiding there in their hearts, and he is dwelling there, hidden away. In the same way, Varahadev, he hid in the heart of Hiranyaksha, because that is the only place where he would not look to find him. In a similar way, Krishna, he hid in the hearts of these gopis, because he was thinking, this place I would be the most hidden away. And hiding there, he waited and waited and waited. And he kept on waiting, because of course, this is the Prakat Lila. This is when Krishna is manifest on earth. So he's waiting for a while. And then at one point he emerges out. He thinks, I'm not sure if he came out of the nose like he did with Hiranyaksha, but he came out in some way or another. And after leaving, he thinks, now maybe I should leave now. I will exit. But when he leaves, after dwelling so long in their hearts, he sees that the Jamuna that he sprung out towards was no longer the Jamuna. It was the Ganga. And that blackish skin that he had before had suddenly taken on the color of those hearts. Shyam Sundar had become Gaur Sundar. That is one of the ways Madhavananda Prabhu explains that Krishna takes this mood of the gopis, and especially Radharani. Because when Krishna leaves, the other Krishna, he hides in their hearts. And then when it is time for him to leave, then he manifests out as Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And while doing this makes sense, because we know Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he is a logical conclusion of the Prakat Lila. Whenever the Prakat Lilas are occurring, then after they are finishing, Mahaprabhu comes immediately after. So these two correlate. So this is a sweet pastime told by Madhavananda Prabhu. And so this is a deeper meaning that the gopis are starting to understand. How could they have been satisfied by philosophy? Because Bhagavatam does say that they were satisfied with the message of Krishna. How could these devotees be satisfied with a simple philosophical explanation? So instead there was a deeper meaning, that Krishna, he is residing in their hearts. And then there is some more philosophy given, something along the lines of the standard explanations of the various states of consciousness and how we should learn to renounce our existence and all these ideas. But then after this, at the very end of that letter, Krishna, he has finished his philosophical deliberation. And then he says, yes, I've given you all of these reasons about why you should not worry that I have left. But in actuality, I will explain now the heart of me leaving. The reason why I have left is because in my separation, I will make your love for me more intense. In this separation, your bhava will intensify. Again, the point is being made. Why did Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, why is he described by Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur as wanting to taste the pains of separation, as was seen when Uddhav arrived in Vrindavan? Because there it is illustrated. The implication there, when Uddhav is in Vrindavan, then it is being described what is going on. And so the point is made that this is when their love, those people whose love is unparalleled by any other being in this universe, their love is made even stronger. And that is, in one sense, in Vrindavan, people sometimes say, Krishna in a transcendental way, he is crooked. Things don't exactly work as they should. The Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, he is surrendering to his devotees rather than his devotees, although his devotees are also surrendering to him. But in pastime, it is the Supreme Personality surrendering to his devotee. Things are not exactly as they should be, or rather they are not as we should think of it in the world here. Actually, that is the way things should be over there. But it is not according to the logic of the world as we know it. Because it does not make sense that separation, in one sense it does, that it should intensify devotion. But our experience is, most of us on this planet are separate from Krishna. And in our separation, we are not growing more intensely in our devotion for Krishna. We are, in fact, delving deeper into it. We are delving deeper into our lack of devotion. The more and more we feel the separation, the more and more we can trick ourselves with lies that we will find happiness in any sense gratification, in all sorts of things, in having a happy family, a good job, all these things. These will make us happy. Breaking all of the regulative principles, having fun with your friends. This is how we will have happiness, because we are separate from Krishna. We can think, oh, I don't really think too much of Krishna. That remembrance there is not there. But then how do we quell that? How do we grow in our devotion in this world? We grow in our devotion by thinking of Krishna and being present with Krishna's holy name, with Krishna's devotees, by having darshan of the murtis, by reading Krishna's literary incarnations in the Shastras. By associating with Krishna, then we begin to grow in our devotion. Our devotion becomes stronger the more and more we unite with Krishna. But in Vraj, things are reversed. The gopis, their devotion is made stronger by separation. Again, that is a reversal of things. That thing which makes us grow in our distance from Krishna makes the gopis come closer to Krishna. That geographical distance from Krishna, that lack of association with Krishna, makes their prema stronger. And therefore, even though there is some geographical distance, their connection and their bond with Krishna is made stronger. They come closer to Krishna the further away they are from him. This is the twisted logic, twisted by our actually twisted vision of Vrindavan. Things are, again, they are reversed to what our expectation would be. So then, after they hear this, the gopis say, I went over it a bit yesterday, they say, okay, this is some nice consolation. You are telling us some nice philosophical points. But really, how could we forget Krishna? Everywhere we go, we are remembering him. They say, this Krishna, they asked questions. Has he forgotten us? Has he forgotten the place of Vrindavan? The name they use of Krishna is a name that is actually used to refer to Krishna in Dwarka. It is a name which refers to his relation to the families of Vasudeva and Devaki. So they say, and by this point, this Krishna, he has gone. He is with his real family now. Who are we? So, like this, they say. And then they say, has he forgotten us? But even if he has forgotten us, we will not forget him. Because everywhere we look, we can see his footprints are left. I still remember His Holiness Mahanidhi Swami once said that there are many ways to define Vrindavan. But the best way to define Vrindavan is it is that place where Srimati Radharani and Krishna leave their footprints wherever they walk. That is what defines Vraj, not some geographical locality. We know this is a dham aparad. It is an offense against the dham to consider it confined within a geographical location. Even though we can point on the map and say Vrindavan is here, to actually constrain it and to define it in geographical terms itself is considered an aparad against the holy dham. I remember I was reading once an essay about the location of the Yogapith, the birthplace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because as we know, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he had discovered that actually one of the places that was more commonly held as the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was not the actual birthplace. The actual birthplace is in Mayapur, just a bit down the road of our own ISKCON campus there. That is the actual birthplace of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But some people of the other sects of Gauriya Vaishnavism, they had seen this and they had thought, no. It's actually across the river. It's across the river in a different part of Navadvip. And so this debate had continued for a while. So I was reading an essay, and it very conclusively proved that there can be no doubt that the Yogapith that Bhaktivinoda Thakur discovered was the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But as I went in the comments, because it was an online article, I read something interesting. There was one devotee who was well known for being very much in the party of those other devotees. And he said, actually, rather commonly I'm known for coming here and disagreeing with what you're saying. But he said, actually, I was discussing with one ISKCON sannyasi and we came together on a conclusion. And this realization that he gave me, I've now stuck with, and I don't bother with this issue at all anymore. Because practically, how much are the holy names being chanted in Mayapur? How much are the holy names being chanted? How strongly is devotion being performed there? We know that famous text about Vidura's heart. It is a place of pilgrimage because there's so much devotion there. And he said, because of that, even if I might disagree on this one point, and again, maybe he said that because he couldn't disagree much more after reading that very extensive proof. But his sentiment was sweet. He said, even if I might disagree with that, that campus itself has become just as good as any other dham because of how much the holy names are being chanted there, because of how much devotion is present there. So this is one of the things that defines the holy dham. And so, if it is defining the dham, if the dham practically is not measured by some geographical locality, but by these elements of devotion, and elements of devotion can only remind us of Krishna, they say how hard is it for us to forget him here? How hard is it? So you will tell us this, but what to do? We will continue in our pains. We are not satisfied. And then they continue to pray and say things, and then at the end they pray to Vrajanath. They use that specific name, the Lord of Vraj, because so much they want him to come back and rule Vraj. So they say, oh Vrajanath, in the same way that you picked up Govardhan Hill, in the same way that you picked it up, please pick up all of Gokul and lift it out of this ocean of pain that we are currently immersed in. And seeing this, Uddhava was very impressed. Uddhava now is getting he is realizing the position that he thought he had is nothing compared to this. Of course it is great for us, but it is relative. And Uddhava was completely humbled. And so Uddhava stayed in Vrindavan for a while. And it is said he was constantly reminding the denizens of Vraj as he was traveling around. He was reminding them of Krishna constantly. Everywhere he would go, he would remind them of Krishna. And how would he do this? He would ask them questions. He would say, here, this tree is, what is this tree? What is its purpose? And all of the members of Vrindavan, all of the people who lived there, all they are thinking about are the pastimes of Krishna and Balaram. And Krishna and Balaram, they had a lot of fun in Vrindavan. They explored and they played everywhere. So not a single part of Vrindavan could not be connected in some way to a pastime of Krishna. So whenever Uddhav would ask a question, what is this tree? What is this rock? What is this area of land here? What are all of these leaves? What are these flowers? What is the name of this place? What is the point of this place? All that they could respond with was Krishna Katha. Because every single part of Vrindavan was so inherently tied to the pastimes of Krishna. So like this, he was going and he was spending his time. And the more and more and more he saw their devotion, the more and more intensely he was impressed. The more intensely it was impressed upon him that this devotion is so high. And then he spoke. And he said, amongst all the people on earth, these women, these gopis, they have achieved the goal of life. Amongst everyone, no one can be said to compete with what they have achieved here. For people who have had these, for people who have tasted such love, for people who have tasted such ecstasy, all of the Brahminical rites are useless. What is the point of what is the point of having all of these samskars performed if you are having such fortune to taste such love for Godhead? My spiritual master, His Holiness Radha Govinda Das Goswami, he was once giving an initiation lecture, and it was a first initiation lecture. And as he was giving the lecture, he was saying, often in ISKCON we refer to second initiation as Brahminical initiation. Because we give you the Brahminical thread, and then devotees think, now at second initiation I've become a Brahmin, I must follow Brahminical things. But Guru Maharaj, he said, actually, even at first initiation, one is a Brahmin. Even at first initiation, one is better than any Brahmin. A Brahmin is situated on sattva. Their life is situated in the mode of goodness. But the devotee is aspiring to have his life situated on the transcendental mode of goodness, Shuddha Sattva. At first initiation or at second initiation, the person is already better than a Brahmin. It is not even that one becomes a Brahmin, one has already been established as better than a Brahmin at first initiation, because that essence of everything, that devotion to Krishna, there it is given. So he said this, and he was glorifying that great position. And then he says, what great fortune these gopis have received, things which no one else, even the goddess of fortune herself, who should be having claim to all great fortunes, Lakshmi. Even she has not been able to have been held like the gopis were held in the Ras Lila. Even she was not allowed entry into it. Even Shiva, actually, we know there's the very famous pastime. Shiva heard Krishna's flute playing, and he desired to enter into that Ras Lila himself. And so he asked Purnamasi to arrange things for him. And then she said, okay, and she gave him the body of a gopi. And as he went to enter, the other gopis, they saw him and they thought, who are you? I didn't see you 2 days ago. I didn't see you yesterday. I didn't see you growing up. I don't know who this person is. And slowly their suspicions rise, and they kicked him out. And they said, you must go, you must leave. You're not allowed here. And in fact, they started beating him, but he was protected. And it was explained. Vaishnavanam yatha sambhu. The greatest of all devotees is Shiva. So do not attack him. But it is correct. You are not a gopi, so you are not allowed to come here. So instead he was made the guardian. And actually that ties in with the point I was making a few days ago about how one must be born into the Prakat Lila before they enter into the Aprakat. Because Shiva, he went instantly into having a gopi's body. He was not born into the community. He was not raised and integrated into the pastimes of Krishna. And therefore he was recognized as an external element. But the devotees, when they join, they are born into the community, and therefore they are not recognized as a stranger. But he is placed outside the Rasa Lila. And there is a very sweet purport to this, which ties in again to that point of how careful we must be about our qualification to hear such things. Because why should he, Shiva, be the guardian of the Rasa Lila? Why should he prevent entry? Shiva himself, he embodies and personifies what? Renunciation. He is the greatest of all yogis. We must realize that being the entryway, Shiva embodies the renunciation and the abandonment for sense gratification that is necessary in order to be able to enter into such topics. So there is some purport to Shiva being made this. But anyways, the point is being made that even the greatest devotee in this existence, if even he is not allowed in, then how auspicious, how high is their position? Lakshmi and Brahma, they only can mentally worship the lotus feet of the Lord. But Krishna himself, he takes it. He places his feet among them. They have a physical association. So great is their fortune. And then Uddhava, he prays. And when Uddhava says things, it is not, again, another reason why it is so valuable, his words. Uddhava was a very, very elevated member of society. His guru was none other than Brihaspati. He's having a very, very significant figure, teacher, spiritual master, who is instructing him in things. This is reflecting the strength of his character. And one with a strong character, if they say something, then it is to be considered to be true. Their words actually have value, unlike most of the prajalpa that is spoken today. So, when he says all these things, we must understand that it is not just he is bewildered by some moments of being impressed. What he is speaking are the deepest of truths. And speaking this, and then he says, even in his humility, he is expressing, no matter my position, he said, I can only pray that even though I have such position outside of Raj, I can only pray that I could be like the grass. I could be a single blade of grass, so that the feet of these elevated devotees could constantly trample on me as they run around. He prays like this. And then, lastly, he prays a specific prayer. This is not mentioned in Bhagavatam, but it was published in the Krishna Caritamrita Bindu magazine, which is published by, I believe, ISKCON Bhubaneswar. And it's a list of a prayer that he actually spoke. That he spoke to Srimati Radharani while glorifying the gopis. He spoke one specific glorification of Srimati Radharani. And while glorifying, he listed all of these various forms of Krishna, or at least these various aspects of Krishna, or at least just some things which can correlate and translate the relationship that Krishna has to Srimati Radharani. And it goes on very long, but he says firstly, whenever Krishna is there as Narayan, she is there as Lakshmi. Whenever there is Brahma, there Saraswati is as well. Whenever there is Shiva, there is Parvati. Whenever there is Vishnu, there is the Vaishnava. Not, of course, that Vaishnavas are Srimati Radharani, but that sort of relationship is there. Whenever Yagyavaraha is there, then Bhumi, the earth, is also there. Whenever there is a Yagya, there is also Dakshina. Wherever there is Urukrama, there is also Jayanti. Wherever Prithu is, also is Archi. Wherever Matsya is, the four Vedas are also there. Wherever Kurma is there, churning the ocean, Vasuki, the great rope that was used to churn with, she is also there. Wherever Dhanvantari is, that ambrosial, life-giving medicine, which he reveals the knowledge of, is also there. Wherever Narasimha Dev is, also there is Katha of Narasimha. Also there is the Narasimha Lila. We understand this. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would often say that when Krishna appears as his holy name, Srimati Radharani appears as Krishna Katha. Then, wherever there is Parashuram, there is the sharpness of his axe. Wherever there is Ramchandra, there is Sita. The moon in the sky always has its moonlight. The sun in the sky always has its sunlight. Indra has Shachi, and the fire has heat and light. Kuvera has the queen of his treasury. And the milk ocean itself has silky white waves that are emanating forth from it. Even the Brahman effulgence, even there it is said that Radharani is also present somehow as the Brahman effulgence. Whatever form Krishna can take, or wherever there is some semblance of, wherever there's some empowerment of Krishna, there Srimati Radharani is as well. And ultimately, when Krishna is there in his original form as the king of Vraj, there she is as the daughter of Rishabhanu. There is Bhagavan with his Hladini Shakti. And then he pays respects to Srimati Radharani. And paying those respects there, we can see I've taken a bit more time than I planned to explain the purport of explaining why Uddhava, especially Uddhava's arrival in Vrindavan, was used to describe this. But in these prayers, we can see this essential principle that wherever Krishna is, Radharani is as well. Krishna is the Shaktiman, the energetic, the source of energies, and Radharani is the energy. The energy has no sense. It does not make any sense for an energy to be there without an energetic. Therefore, Radharani, wherever Krishna is, she follows. Their union is always there. It is constantly had. No matter where Krishna goes, there Radharani is. Constantly together, they imply each other as strongly as black implies white. This is why Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva works even in terms of rasa. Because there is the constant implication of each other, of a oneness not only in philosophy, but also a oneness in pastime, a oneness in emotion. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, one can even say that their hearts are non-different, their souls are non-different. We also read that in Adi Lila. Although for Lila they appear as two people, their souls are one and the same. How painful, how impossibly inconceivable must the pain be for somebody who is so inherent to someone else to be separated from them. This here is showing the most intense forms of love. And when Uddhava is giving this message, we can see, what do we know of the pains of separation? At the most, were some perverted reflection, which even as a reflection is such a minute thing compared to whatever she is feeling. But Uddhava, again, coming from that perspective outside, he is allowing us a mirror through which we can perceive these things, a lens through which we can maybe see some of the position of these things. Srimati Radharani's love is said, and her pains of separation are glorified in terms of Uddhava, because in these pastimes we can see the intensity of that separation. And so, this is why Srimati Radharani, she is feeling all these things. And so some people might say, okay, that sounds very painful. I may not be able to understand it. I can barely understand the basic ideas. But I can see why this would be the greatest pain. Why then would Krishna want to taste it? Why would somebody want to taste this? It doesn't look like she's tasting something sweet. Mahaprabhu is being described with all of these different manifestations on his body. And for this, again, Uddhava's pastimes are somewhat relevant. Because Uddhava, it is said, after speaking with Nanda Maharaj, after hearing Nanda Maharaj's pains of separation, it is said he spoke muda, with happiness. And this is confusing. Why would he speak with happiness? Why would somebody like Uddhav, such a sweet, soft soul, speak with happiness upon hearing such pains? And the purport that is given says that these pains, even though they look painful, are the greatest of ecstasies. This is the greatest ecstasy one can feel, is this pain. Even though it is sorrow, it is an ecstatic sorrow. The analogy that is sometimes given is just in the same way that when ice becomes very, 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 very cold, it begins to feel like it burns. The experience is like burning, but it is still cold. It is still a feeling of coldness on you. In the same way, the ecstasy that is felt becomes so intense that it seems to be like pain. But it is still the highest ecstasy. And this is why Mahaprabhu wanted to taste it. Because otherwise it wouldn't make much sense. And of course, because of this, we can begin to understand. Srimati Radharani, she is therefore the worshipable deity of the Gauriya Vaishnavas. Because even though it is very far away, Madhavananda Prabhu always says, even though we are right now cultivating ABC, we should still know that XYZ exists. So Radharani is actually, in a sense, the Ishtadev of the Gauriya Vaishnavas. Not that we are qualified yet to directly approach her. But actually, it is even said sometimes that the prayojana, or the goal of our line, maybe necessarily isn't even Krishna, or going back home back to Godhead. In its deepest sense, the prayojana is prem. The prayojana, the goal, is to have love for Godhead. That is the goal itself. And Srimati Radharani, she is embodying that. She is that. She is Mahabhav Swarupini. Her very Swarup, her very form is Mahabhav, that great devotion which we are trying to taste. And so, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, it's once said, again, with his great insight and his great realization, he was going to Radhakund. And another small point, just again to clarify that Radharani's position is very hard for us to understand and not something to be rushed to. When Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur went to Radhakund, when he went down and sat down and spoke Krishna Katha, everyone is expecting Radha Katha, Ras Lila, Gopi Geet. We can finally hear all these great esoteric things. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur spoke in the first few verses of Nectar of Instruction on Upadeshamrita. And he said, all these people, they are speaking all the time about Radharani here. And maybe some are qualified, that was not his point. But all these people, they're speaking about Radharani here, they're thinking they have the qualification for it. They are barely qualified to hear the first few verses of Nectar of Instruction, let alone the great position of Radharani. But nevertheless, while there, some of his disciples came and they said, Gurudev, there's some famous billionaire here, and he is coming here barefoot, and he's doing parikrama of Radhakund and Shyamakund. And particularly, he's showing great reverence to Radhakund. How amazing is this? How great is this that a man with so much wealth is still being humble enough to come on pilgrimage here? And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he said, this is fine. This is better than him spending his money on so much sense gratification or all sorts of other things. It is good that he has some sentiment, but we should not be too impressed. We should not associate with this too much, because this is not our mood. He has come here because he has a respect for Radharani. He respects Radharani as that great consort of Krishna. The value of Radharani comes because she is with Krishna. But we have the other conception. In our line, all of the value we have for Krishna comes because we value Radharani. Krishna's value comes because he is associating with Radharani, not vice versa. And so in that sense, it's sometimes said that the Gauriya Vaishnavas, we most embody the most ecumenical, this is a term meaning a joining of groups. We embody the ecumenical attitude that so many Mayavadis strive for and totally miss the mark in achieving. Because we are Vaishnavas, yes, we worship Krishna as Swayam Bhagavan. But we also see, in a sense, we can also be considered Shaktas, because we consider the Shakti of Krishna to be even supreme, the most worshipable. And in another sense, we can also be considered a little less strongly than the first two Shaivas, because we place such a great role on devotion to Krishna's devotee, to the devotees, to the Vaishnavas. And who do we say is the greatest Vaishnava? We say Shiva is. So we have such a great esteem for all these three figures who are the most commonly seen as the supreme. And in this way, all three are reconciled. But that's just a small point. Yeah. So this is hopefully an explanation why Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur has honed in on this pastime of Uddhava in Vrindavan in order to explain exactly the mood Mahaprabhu was trying to taste. It was this ecstasy. And then starting from tomorrow, then we can begin the 9 verses where we heard today this ecstasy, this love through the words of Uddhava. And then tomorrow we will go quickly through, we won't dwell too long on these words from the mouth of Radharani, coming again through the mouth of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Thakur ki jai. Sri Caitanya Caritamrita ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Namo Vishnu Padaya.